All right, so welcome to Lecture 3, Chapter 1, Cluster 3. So the first thing we're looking at is percentages. So here's our examples. All right, so we're given this fraction, 90 over 180, and we're asked to simplify the fraction. So when you're simplifying a fraction, what you just want to do is find the number you can divide the top and the bottom by. And it has to be the same number. Well, notice they both have a 0. So I know that this is divisible by 10. So two ways to do it. I'll show you the first way, and then the second way is actually the shortcut. So you could go ahead and divide both by 10. And then you'll get, well, 90 divided by 10 is 9, and 180 divided by 10 is 18. So you could go ahead and do that. That works. A lot of the times, though, the shortcut we would use, instead of showing that division, would be to just go ahead and cancel out the zeros, because we know, let me use a different pen. Canceling out the zeros because we know they're both divisible by 10. So that sort of slashing out shortcut is what a lot of times we'll end up using. All right, so are we done though? Well, no, 9 and 18 are both divisible by another number. And another number they're both divisible by is 9. So divide by 9, and we're going to get 9 divided by 9 is 1. And 18 divided by 9 is 2. Awesome, very good. All right, we'll go ahead and box our answer. So remember, you're just dividing the top and the bottom by the exact same number. We would not be dividing the top by 9 and then the bottom by 3 or something. You need to be dividing by the same number when you're simplifying fractions. Now let's look at writing a half as a decimal. Okay, so starting with a half, to write as a decimal, we're going to go ahead and use long division. Okay, so doing that, if you can't remember which one goes in the house or not, the way I like to remember it is if you think about this little line here as the roof, and think about 1 is on the roof, and the roof starts to break. So 2, who's underneath the roof, is not going to want to get crushed, so he runs outside of the roof, and 1 will fall through. Just a fun way of remembering it. You don't have to remember that. All right, so there we go, our long division. Well, can 2 go into 1? No, it can't. So in order to do this, we're going to add our decimal point, and then add a 0, and include that point up there. So now the question is, can 2 go into 10? Yes, it can. It can go into 10 how many times? 5 times. And then we can go ahead and do that subtraction. This will be 0. So our answer is going to be half is 0.5. So to change from a fraction into a decimal, you go ahead and you just do long division. So now we're going to write 0.5 as a percent. So starting off, real quick, percents. We always think of, like, let's say if you got your test back, right? And your test results, a lot of times teachers might write it as, let's say, 70 out of 100. Or maybe even, 90 out of 100. That's way better, right? Okay, so that's how you'd write a percent. And 90 out of 100, how would we actually say this as a percent? That is 90%. Okay, so that's like what you would normally see on the top of a test or something, right? That's how you get a percent. It's something over 100. So my goal is going to be to write 0.5 and somehow find a way to get a fraction with 100 on the bottom. But at the moment, we only have 0.5 over 1. Remember, we can do that with any number. We just write it over 1. So that's all we have. But I really, really want, instead of a 1 there, I want to have 100 down in the denominator. So I can go ahead and just multiply the bottom by 100. Why not? Building up rule. But remember, if you do anything to the bottom, you have to do the same thing to the top. So I multiply the bottom by 100 to balance that out, and multiply the top by 100 as well. And when I do that, I have, well, 1 times 100 is 100. What is 0.5 times 100? Well, if I don't quite remember that, let's go ahead and do that by hand. Remember, because we need to do all the things by hand for chapter 1. Let's see, 0.5. All right. Well, the first cycle, 5 times 0 is, that's just 0. 5 times 0 is also 0. 5 times 5, 5 times 1 is 5. All right, so the first cycle is done. So once we've done the first cycle, we add that 0, and then we start our next cycle. That's 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 0, also 0. And no surprise, 0 times 1 is 0. So we'll add this up, 0 and 0, 0, 0, 0, aha, 0 plus 5, 5, and add that 0. So the question is, how many decimals do we need to move? Well, remember, we're just going to go up and check these. How many decimals do you see? I just see 1. Boop. So we're going to move our decimal once. And we would not write that 0 there in front of our number, so we can go ahead and just cross that out. So our answer is going to be 50. So on the top, 0.5 times 100 is 50. So another way, instead of having to do the whole long division, if you want, if you're multiplying anything by forms of 10, 100, 1,000, all you have to do is look at the number of zeros you have. How many zeros do we have here? We have 1, 2. And so the number of zeros you have is how many places you move your decimal point. Okay? So we're going to move it 1, 2, and then fill in that 0. And we get 50. Okay, so that's a shortcut. So for example, if you were going to be multiplying 0.5 by 1,000, how many decimal places would we move? 3, because there are 3 zeros. So you go ahead and take 0.5 and move it 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3. And there we go, we'd have 500. Okay, so multiplying by tens, thousands, and hundreds can be pretty straightforward as long as you remember that little pattern. All right, so there we go. We're close to writing it as a percent. The last step we're going to do is write it as 50%. ND. So we're going to convert this into a fraction. So it's given as a percent, 25%. Well, we know, just as we did as an example here, if you saw 25% on your test, you would know that that is the same as 25 out of 100 points, for example. All right, so now we have that fraction, and we know how to simplify fractions. We've done that up here. So let's see, what are they both divisible by? Well, if we're thinking of quarters, that's 1 quarter, and $1 is 4 quarters. So 25 is divisible by 25, and 100 is divisible by 25. That's going to be 1, and how many quarters do we have in $1? 4. And there we go, 1/4. That's not divisible by anything else, so we're done. Fraction, lowest terms. Awesome. All right, so we're going to work on translating from English to mathematics, because remember, often mathematics is just a symbolic language. So let's see, note some of the translations from English to mathematics. So here are a few of the common translations, you could call it if you want. So if you see the word is the equal sign in mathematics. Of would be multiplication. Out of is actually division. So you gotta be careful there. If you see out of, that means division. And is addition. And less than is subtraction, but please be careful with subtraction. Subtraction's a little tricky guy. So you gotta watch out on subtraction sometimes. So now what we're gonna do is you're gonna write these sentences, turn them into a mathematical equation, and then solve. Okay, so right now we're gonna be translators. Translators from English to mathematics. So first things first, whenever I'm translating, I like to look for is. Okay, that's my equal sign. Once I find that, I know which side to put all of my symbols. So let's see, where is in A? Aha, go ahead, circle is. That is our equal sign. So once you found your equal sign, anything that's on the left is going to stay on the left, anything on the right is going to stay on the right. All right, so the first thing though, is when you see this word what, do we know what that is? Well, no, we don't. It's called what, right? So we don't know what it is, and in algebra, the thing we don't know is our variable. So we're gonna go ahead, and what is our variable? You could pick anything you want to be as a variable. If you feel like picking t, pick t. If you feel like picking x, pick x. I'll go ahead and just use x because it's sort of the generic variable that we always see. All right, now it's translating 70%. Okay, 70%, careful. In math, even though this is a number, we can't use a percentage symbol in an equation. But remember, we know how to translate 70%. That would just be 70 over 100. So we're good. So that's going to be 70 over 100. And then what is of in mathematics? Of is, multiplication. Okay, so of becomes multiplication. And then 500, 500 is just a number. Nothing to change there. Drop down that 500. So if I was to rewrite this equation, that's going to be x equals 70 over 100 times 500. And now let's simplify this. Well, I know I can write 500 as over 1. Let's see, can I do any of that canceling zeros trick that I did before? Well, yeah, I can cancel this 0 with that 0. And I can also cancel this 0 with one of these. So all I'm going to be left with is, and let me carry this over to the side using my nice arrow to let you know where I'm going, x equals 7 times 50. Wow, what is 7 times 50? Well, 7 times 0 is 0, and 7 times 5 is 35. So there we go. X equals 35. Since this was a word problem, we're going to answer in word form, so the answer is going to be, well, the question was, what is 70% of 500? So our answer is 35 is 70% of 500. And there we go. So go ahead and try translate B by yourself. And then I'll go ahead and quickly translate it to catch up with you. All right, well, identifying our is value first. There he is. That's our equal sign. Then we're going to translate this into mathematics, which is going to be 22 over 100. Our of symbol becomes a multiplication, and then drop down that 350 because it's already a number. Now, what is going to be our variable, x? So we have x equals 22 over 100 times 350. Well, again, we can go ahead and put that variable, or that number, 350 over 1. And let's just do the same simplifying we did previously. We can cancel that 1 0 with the other 0 there. Let's see, let's go ahead and move this to the side, showing my arrow to let you guys know where I'm going. Can I simplify anything else? Well, I know 22 and 10, those are both divisible by 2. Divide by 2, divide by 2. So I'll get x equals 11 over 5 times 35 over 1. Anything else I can simplify? 5 and 35, those are both divisible by 5. You can divide that one by 5, divide that by 5, and I get x equals 11 times 7. And that is just going to be 77. Ooh, running out of space here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and write my answer up top here. So the answer is 77 is 22% of 350. Alright, let's go ahead and space off my problems here so I don't get it confused. And the next one. Go ahead and translate C and D, and then check back with me in a second. Okay, locating is, that's my equal sign. I have 12 equals 15%, that's in the of, so that's multiplication. And then the what will be my variable. Let's go with x. So notice I do kind of a weird scripted x, so I don't get it confused with my multiplication symbol for x. Oh, now this is interesting. My variable is on this side. So I want to solve for my variable and get it by itself. So to get x by itself, right now it's being multiplied by 15 over 100. So how do I undo that multiplication of 15 over 100? Well, to undo multiplication, we would use division. But because this is a fraction, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a trick. Okay, so trick time, here it comes. Our trick is going to be, I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of this fraction. So instead of 15 over 100, I'm going to multiply it by 100 over 15. Why do I do that? Well, because when I multiply these two fractions, I can simplify that 100 with that 100, and that 15 with that 15. Everything cancels out on this side. So I'm just left with x, because I multiplied by the reciprocal. Right? But rules of equations, I need to multiply the other side by the same thing. And with 12, remember, we can write that as over 1. So I have 100 over 15 times 12 over 1. Can I simplify? Well, 15 and 12 don't have anything in common. But can 15 go into 100? Well, it can't go completely into 100, but they're both divisible by 5. You divide by 5, divide by 5, and I'm left with, well, 15 divided by 5 is going to be 3. 100 divided by 5, what is 100 divided by 5? Is that 20? Yep, it's 20. All right. Let's go ahead and figure out this multiplication on the side. So pulling out our scratch work. I'm going to multiply across, so 20 times 12. So 0 times 2 is going to be 0. 2 times 2 is 4. That was it for the first cycle. I'm bringing that 0 in to start my next cycle. That's going to be 1 times 0 is 0. 2 times 1 is 2. Add them up and I get 0, 4, 2. So 240. Oh, I just saw something. What did I see? 3 and 12. Those actually do have something in common. So I really could have simplified that earlier. I didn't see that. All right, well, mistakes happen. So let's see. We're going to divide by 3 and divide by 3. And what do I get? Let's go ahead and bring this out over here. Things are getting squishy. It's going to be 20 over 1. So I'm just going to write it as 20 times 12 divided by 3 is going to be 4. Well, 20 times 4, I know that 2 times 4 is 8, and then I'll just tack on that 0, so I get 80. So x equals 80. All right, what is my answer? 12 is 15% of 80. There is my answer. And here we go, last part for this page. Translating this, we're going to get 21.1 is 0.5 over 100 times, and let's just use x again. All right, we're going to go ahead and get x by itself. So to get x by itself, we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the fraction, just like we did on that other example. Oops, getting squishy again. I have to leave more space on this the next time I print out these sheets. And when I do that, the hundreds will cancel, and the 0.5s will cancel each other out, and I'm just left with x by itself on that one side. All right, so multiplying across, let's see. 100 divided by 0.5. So let's do that division on the side real quick. So 100 divided by 0.5, if we do long division, it's going to be 0.5 divided into 100. When I want to do the division, I'm going to move the decimal point over as many places as I can to get my whole number. So that's actually going to be 5 into 1,000. And how many times does 5 go into 1,000? Well, we know that 5 goes into 10 twice, and then we're just going to add on those 2 more zeros. So 5 goes into 1,000 200 times. So 1,000 divided by 0.5 is actually 200. And last, what we're going to do, bring out the other sticky notes. Let's go ahead and do that multiplication. Alright, let's see. 200 times 21.1. Here we go. We got cycles to go. 1 times 0, 0. 1 times 0, 0. 1 times 2, 2. That's it for that cycle. Bring in the 0. Next cycle. 1 times 0, 0. 1 times 0, 0. 1 times 2, 2. Alright, so that was it for that cycle. We have our next cycle, so we'll bring in 2 zeros this time. 2 times 0, 0. 2 times 0, 0. 2 times 2 is 4. So now we're going to add this all up. That's going to be 0, 0, 2, 2, and 4. How many decimal places do we move? Well, we only have one occurring, so we're just going to move it over once. Alright, and what are we left with? 4,220 is going to be our answer. Alright, there we go. Let's write out our final answer. So 21.1 is 0.5% of 4,220. Period. That one was interesting because of all those decimals going on. Alright, so that's it for the first page. Let's look at the second page. Alright, applications. Always exciting. So our plan for applications, you want to underline the question to figure out what the unknown variable is or what we're trying